Chapter 17 to Chapter 20. Chapter 17, Monday. On Monday morning, the boys woke up early, gathered their supplies, and headed to the school, about 15 minutes before the rest of the students started to arrive. George and Harold carried their stilts and supplies into the boys' restroom upstairs and placed them inside one of the empty stalls. Finally, they closed the stall door and locked it. If you are standing outside the stall, looking underneath the door, it appears as if somebody was sitting down there, taking care of business. George and Harold knew that nobody would dare go near the stall, so it was now the safest place in the school to hide stuff. Soon the students began arriving, and the day started pretty much like normal. Mr. Krupp marched up and down the hallways, screaming and making children cry. Kipper and his creeps stole money and distributed wedgies to the kindergartners. And a general feeling of hopelessness and despair filled the morning air. At lunchtime, as usual, the downtrodden kindergartners sat at their table with no food at all. Mr. Krupp stomped up to the kindergarten table and started getting angry. "How come you kids never have any food at lunchtime?" he shouted. Said one kid. "We're on diets." "Oh," said Mr. Krupp as he pulled his belt up over his giant stomach. "Well, good," he said. "It's important to stay fit and healthy like me." In the afternoon, George and Harold asked to be excused so they could use the restroom. They only had about 5 minutes to set things up, so they had to hurry. Harold opened the locked door of their secret restroom stall, and George climbed up on the stilts. Quickly, they sneaked out into the hallway. George stilt walked over to Kipper's locker, and Harold handed him a long spool of shelf-lining paper. Carefully, George placed the paper on top of the lockers and rolled it down to the end. The paper flipped over the edge of the locker tops and rolled down the side. Harold caught it and taped it to the side of the lockers, marking off some measurements with a ruler. George put the padlock that he and Harold had brought onto the end of the paper, 2 lockers down from Kipper's. They were ready. Quickly, they put their supplies back into the restroom stall, locked the door, and hurried back to their classroom. At the end of the day, Kipper walked to his locker as usual. He unlocked his lock with the key hanging around his neck, then pulled his padlock on top of his locker, right on top of the long roll of paper. George and Harold were standing about 6 lockers away, where Harold had taped the end of the paper to the side of the long row of lockers. Now came the tricky part. As Harold provided cover, George carefully pulled at the long roll of paper. The paper began to move. Kipper's padlock, which was just above Kipper's head, began to move away from Kipper. George and Harold's padlock, which was 2 lockers away, began moving toward Kipper. Harold had measured everything carefully, so George knew to pull the paper exactly 24 inches. When he was finished pulling, the new padlock was directly above Kipper's locker. Kipper had just finished stuffing all of his stolen money into his duffel bag. He put his cell phone on the top shelf of his locker, closed the door, then reached up and grabbed George and Harold's padlock. Next, he closed the door, clicked the new padlock on security. "Let's boogie," said Kipper to his buddies, and they strutted to the gymnasium to get ready for wrestling practice. "That was awesome," said Harold. "Yeah," said George, "but we still got a lot of work to do." George and Harold waited patiently until almost everyone had gone home. Some kids were still in the gym, or outside, or in the chess club downstairs, but the hallways and restrooms were empty. George and Harold sneaked over to Kipper's locker, unlocked their padlock, and opened the door. Harold unzipped Kipper's duffel bag and emptied all the stolen money onto the floor. "Whoa," said Harold. "There must be $1,000 in here." Harold quickly scooped up the stolen cash while George typed on Kipper's cell phone. "What are you doing with the phone?" asked Harold. "I'm sending a text to Kipper's 3 goons," said George. Once the money was safe and the texts were sent, George and Harold put everything back the way it was, with 2 additions. Harold put the Susie Sunshine friendship bracelet kit in Kipper's locker, and George placed an envelope beside Kipper's phone. Finally, George grabbed Kipper's padlock from the top of the lockers, closed the doors, and locked it with Kipper's own padlock. Then they set everything up so it would be ready for tomorrow afternoon. "Let's get out of here," Harold said nervously. "There's one more thing," said George. Quickly, the boys sneaked into the gym locker room and left a second envelope inside one of Kipper's smelly shoes. Then they hurried out of the school and headed for home. "I kind of wish we could stay and watch the fireworks," said Harold. "I think it's better if we're not there," said George. "Things are about to get ugly." Chapter 18. Things Get Ugly. Kipper found the envelope in his shoe just after wrestling practice ended. He opened it. Inside were 2 friendship bracelets and a note addressed to him. Kipper proudly slipped each friendship bracelet onto his wrist and admired it. He couldn't wait to show his buddies. "Dear Kipper, we made these friendship bracelets for you because we think you're totally cool and stuff. Love, the cheerleaders." Who were all out in the hallway staring at their cell phones in shock. "Look what I got," Kipper said proudly, waving his wrists at his goons. Kipper's friends, who were all reading the same text message on their phones, looked up at Kipper with their mouths hanging open in disbelief. "What?" said Kipper. "They're just friendship bracelets." Kipper's 3 friends looked at each other like Kipper had gone completely mad. "I don't want to make friendship bracelets with you, dude," said Loogie. "Me neither," said the other 2 thugs simultaneously. "What are you talking about?" said Kipper. He unlocked his locker and opened it up. "Hey, what the heck is this?" Kipper screamed. "Somebody's been in my locker." Loogie, Bug, and Frankenstein saw the Susie Sunshine friendship bracelet kit and shook their heads in disgust. Kipper kicked the kit into the hallway and stomped on it. Then he tore open his duffel bag. It was empty. "Ah! Somebody stole all my money!" Kipper looked up and down the hall, frenetically. "When I find out who's been in my locker, I'm gonna kiss them," asked Frankenstein. The other 2 thugs laughed. Kipper grabbed Frankenstein by his shirt collar and shook him back and forth like a rag. "What are you talking about?" he screamed. "This," said Frankenstein. He showed Kipper the text that had been sent from Kipper's cell phone. I didn't write that," Kipper screamed. "Well, what's up with those friendship bracelets on your wrist then?" asked Bug. The cheerleaders gave me those," said Kipper. At that very moment, a group of cheerleaders was coming in from practice outside. "I'll prove it," said Kipper. He showed the bracelets to the cheerleaders, waving his wrist at them like a lunatic. "You guys made me these for me, right?" Kipper asked them, pointing desperately at the friendship bracelets. The cheerleaders gave Kipper a strange look. "Ew," said Wendy Swan, the head cheerleader. Kipper blinked his eyes like a crazy person. He began breathing heavily. He clenched his fists and shook with rage. Kipper's friends glanced at each other, exchanging silent, worried looks. They each took a few steps backwards, as if they feared Kipper might explode. Hey, we'll see you later, Susie Sunshine," said Loogie. The 3 thugs walked away, laughing, leaving Kipper alone in frenzied. Finally, Kipper returned to his locker. He grabbed his cell phone and found an envelope beside it. Kipper tore open the envelope with an insane rage and read the note inside. "I'm coming for you," signed Wedgie Maggie. Chapter 19. Who's Wedgie Maggie? George and Harold stopped by the thrift shop on their way home to buy a bunch of supplies for Tuesday. The checkout lady gave them a very strange look as they walked up to the cash register. "What are all these dresses for?" asked the ladies. "They're for school," said Harold. "Oh," said the lady. When they got home, the two boys sat in George's bedroom and counted up Kipper's stolen money. It totaled $916. "I feel like Robin Hood," said George. "What should we do with all this dough?" "I think we should use it to buy lunches for all the kindergartners," said Harold. "That's what it was supposed to be used for in the first place." George agreed. He picked up the phone and called the Piqua Pizza Palace. "Can you guys deliver pizzas to the elementary school around noon tomorrow?" he said. "Really? Awesome! We'll take 5 large cheese pizzas, 5 large pepperoni, 5 large black olive, and pineapple." George discussed the details and arranged to drop off the payment in the morning. "We're all set for lunch tomorrow," said George. "Cool," said Harold. The next morning on the way to school, George and Harold walked by the Piqua Pizza Palace. It wouldn't open till 11 a.m., but that didn't matter. George took out an envelope filled with money, coupons, instructions, and a tip for the delivery guy, and dropped it through the mail slot on the front door. George and Harold had a very busy day ahead of them. They got to the school early and unlocked the door to their secret restroom stall. As the two boys unloaded their supplies and arranged their stilts, they headed to the sounds of the other students beginning to arrive. Today sounded just like any other day, but things at Jerome Howard's elementary school were starting to change. Kipper stood by the entrance of the school like normal, but he wasn't just stealing money from the kindergartners like he usually did. Today, he also wanted information. He seemed a little anxious and a little shaky, like he hadn't gotten a lot of sleep the night before. Kipper's 3 buddies, who usually stuck to his side, were keeping their distance from him. Loogie, Bug, Frankenstein all watched Kipper with worried looks on their faces. Kipper grabbed every kid who came toward the door and asked them all the same question. "Who is Wedgie Maggie?" Nobody outside the school has ever heard of Wedgie Maggie, but inside the school, George and Harold were busy spreading rumors about this mysterious stranger. "Did you hear about Wedgie Maggie?" George asked Harold loudly near a group of gossipy girls. "Yeah," said Harold, even louder. "I heard Wedgie Maggie's a ghost." "Me too," said George. "I heard Wedgie Maggie haunts the hallways of the school looking for revenge." "Revenge against who?" asked Harold intensely. "Against Kipper Krupp," cried George in a booming whisper. The gossipy girls listened closely as George continued. "I heard that Kipper Krupp got cursed by the ghost of Wedgie Maggie." "Heavens no," cried Harold. "What for?" "For being mean to kindergartners," said George. "Wedgie Maggie's the patron ghost of kindergartners." "I did not know that," said Harold. "Oh, poor Kipper. Poor Kipper." George and Harold walked away, shaking their heads with pity. The wide-eyed group of gossipy girls had rendered Chansley speechless. Quickly, they began sending frenetic texts all over their friends about the horrible ghosts of Wedgie Maggie. Within an hour, the whole school knew the terrible truth about Wedgie Maggie, and it didn't take long before the information made its way to Kipper and his friends. "That's stupid," said Kipper. "There's no such thing as ghosts." Yeah," said Loogie. "But I heard he can go through walls and even lockers. Maybe the ghost stole all that money yesterday." "That's a bunch of bunk," said Kipper. "What's a ghost gonna do with money?" Maybe he'll give it back to the kindergartners," said Frankenstein. I heard Wedgie Maggie was a friend to all kindergartners. Excuse me, said a pizza delivery guy holding 15 large pizza boxes. I'm supposed to deliver these pizzas to the kindergartners. Do you guys know where the cafeteria is? Down the hall, said Kipper. Hey, who ordered those pizzas? I don't know, said the delivery guy. I never saw him. I think his name was Wedgie something. Kipper gasps. You say you never saw him? Nope, said the delivery guy. Nobody's ever seen him, but he's a pretty good tipper. Chapter 20. Tuesday afternoon. Lunchtime was a great success. All the kinders loved their pizza and pop, and nobody seemed to mind that it had all been bought and paid for by a ghost. Haunted pizza tastes the best, said Freddie Moore, and the other kindergartners couldn't have agreed more. After school, Kipper unlocked his locker and once again put his padlock on top of the locker. And just like yesterday, George pulled on the long strip of paper, switching Kipper's padlock for their own. Kipper grabbed George and Harold's padlock, clicked it closed on his locker, and pulled hard to make sure it was really locked tightly. It was. Once the hallways were empty, George and Harold got back to work. George unlocked Kipper's locker while Harold filled it up with pretty, fat, lacy dresses, making sure their bows looked beautiful and their ruffles were just right. George typed another text message on Kipper's phone and left a new envelope beside it. Then they locked the door with Kipper's lock, set everything up so it wouldn't work again the same way tomorrow. Are you sure we can't stay here and watch all the fun? Asked Harold. We better not, said George. Things are about to get even uglier. And that's it for today's video. Thanks for listening. Bye.